This looks like a fun car, doesn't it? It's actually still quite small, but bigger than the Renault 5, because this one here is the bigger brother, the Renault 4. So larger, although the number is a lower one. And we'll drive it here for you today and find out everything about it you need to know. With Thomas Naudegefühl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go. With already this really cool looking mask in the front. The light goes all the way around, also here with the logo. Is it actually illuminated? Yes, it's actually also illuminated. Sometimes they can just look illuminated, but we took some shots in the dark for you in the basement garage. They can see all about these light features, also the daytime running light in the side, which is then replaced by the turning indicators or the hazard lights. So a fun design, and you can also individually exchange this part here, for example. They intentionally design it that way. If they're like minor scratches, that this one protects the stuff underneath and can be also exchanged without any like big repair costs and so on. And then here you can see this rather upright design. The length is 4 meters 14 or 163 inches. And that's 22 centimeters or 9 inches longer than the smaller Renault 5. So this one here offers more car. I'll also tell you later more about the pricing differences. Wheels, always 18-inch, but you would start like just with a wheel cap based wheel. But these here are the optional aluminum wheels, or then in the higher trim levels. This one is here the techno trim level. Here is the charging flap integrated in the side. So is the driver's side in the front. 11 kilowatt AC, V2L is possible, and then DC charging 80 or 100 kilowatt depending on the battery size. 15 to 80% state of charge is in about 30 minutes, so it will from 10 to 80% will be in over 30 minutes. And the battery capacities, you have two choices, either 40 kilowatt hours or 52 kilowatt hours. We have the bigger one here today, always front wheel drive. And it's also connected to the horsepower figure. So the small battery, 120 horsepower, the bigger battery we drive here today with 150 horsepower. And the acceleration figures there are 9.2 or 8.2 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. In the side profile and also in the rear, it just looks fun. Iconic design indeed. The rear signature also looks pretty cool, and even more interesting, brake light then appears in the top part, and the indicators or hazard lights really small too. I mean, at least there are two. Always two there are. But still hard to see. Could have been maybe like a little bit larger. And also a retro-inspired design here. You can see it's like the length here and then the length in the lower part. And this has been like with the old cars, because the Renault 4 and the Renault 5, they were, they're vintage cars like in 1960s, 1970s. And they kept some of this design heritage. So, I mean, younger buyers probably won't care. But if you're a little bit older and still know the cars, I think you still can see something of that in there. Top speed, by the way, is 150 kilometers an hour. Does it feature a frunk? No, it does not. But they use all the space they have here. Here also for the 12-volt board net battery. There we go. However, what's also featured here is a heat pump, so that you have less range losses in wintertime. And the turning circle here is 10.8 meters. With Renault, you still get these typical key cards, and then door closing sound. Probably not the strength of the vehicle also here. Sounds pretty thin, so yeah, this is, as I said, not the strength of this vehicle, but there will be some other coming up. However, here, hard pack on the top part. Then we have the denim insert here in the techno trim. It's a very beautiful trim with blue accentuations. Here it could be softer for your left elbow, definitely. And here all hard plastic. And then the interior looks pretty modern. Also with the steering wheel, it has like this flat-ish bottom. Also animal-free material, high quality, feels really nice. And then here, real buttons also for the cruise control on the left side. This is like the drive mode selector called Multi-Sense. And these seats here in the techno trim with the denim style, these look amazing, right? The true denim fabric here, and really wide, like the shoulder accentuations, like the side bolsters. It looks like a seat from a bigger luxury car indeed. And then there would be the iconic trim we had it last time in the studio with high-grade leatherette. And then there would also be a gray fabric in the Evolution trim. So these three possibilities there are, and they're actually decently comfortable and yeah, also good and wide. And actually, just from the height, you see here, like my shoulders are a little bit higher than the seat itself. So maybe the height could be better for tall persons. If you're not as tall as me, 189, 62, then it's actually no problem. But here also a lot of headroom. This is actually quite good. So still, the seats are one of the highlights here. And here there's like the pumping up yaw. And this is then here the lumbar support. This is electric. Other than that, all is then manual here, also front and back, and as well as the steering wheel up and down. Yeah, and of course, recently that version with the soft top we had in the studio is such a beautiful version and makes the car so unique. Of course, as a convertible lover, I would definitely go for this one. Or would you? And I think Leah too, right? Yes. Yeah, Leah would take that one too, for sure. Yeah, I love cars that are unique in its segment each. Then to the cockpit here. Pretty cool here in this techno trim that we have this denim dashboard here. There's also ambient lighting available, and we took some shots for you there in the basement garage that you can see that a little bit better when it's a little bit darker actually. Also nice details, for example here with the seat belt, they thought about covering this one here with some fabric from the inside, that when it touches here this plastic area, it doesn't create any noise or scratches and so on. I love this attention to detail. And oh yeah, and for example here the imprinted 4 on the floor mat. Isofix already here on the passenger seat here, for example. This is also a practical thing, and yeah, this pattern of the front seat, especially here in this techno trim, is really beautiful. Would you rather go for this one or the iconic trim with the high-grade leatherette that we shown to you last time? Tell me in the comments. Yeah, and then as I said, the Evolution with grey fabric would also be possible. Here, yeah, should also be a little bit softer for your elbow. So obviously they didn't think about elbow protection here. Maybe they called the guys at Alpine Stars for some elbow protectors or something. And then here, there's some space underneath. It is pretty like a slim hole, gotta say that though. And then here, this is the cup holder, not really adaptive, but you can apply this split. Here you can, for example, put the key card. Let me show it to you. There we go. Key card. And then this is the inductive charging pad with no ventilation, however, 2 USB-C chargers. This is where you pull the electric handbrake like this. And then cool, from my perspective, I can also activate that here. So here we have a real climate unit with nice clicking sounds. And here also the fan speed, for example. So easy, straightforward control in combination with this 10-inch infotainment system. You also have a volume, like separate volume knobs on top of that, or if you want to shut down the screen maybe at night or something like that. And soon going to show that is a native Google inbuilt here. And on the left side you either have 7-inch instruments or these here, the bigger ones, the 10-inch. Interesting that here there's a lot of like levers here behind, indicators and lights. Here then for the wipers, then typical Renault volume control here, which is getting close with tall legs, knees here definitely, this area here, really close, and on the left side as well. And then there's another stalk here for the shifting, and not sure if you've seen that, but what they thought about here, this is like a design from a lipstick, like when you open the first cap and then, you know, I'm not sure, I didn't see it the first time. Has anyone? Then please feel free to tell me in the comments. I've put in a gear for the driver POV, and then when I use the left pedal here, look at the lower right, here recuperation levels, and then one more time, one pedal is activated. So when I here press it 3 times, then we have a true one pedal driving in the Renault first time. Here on the left side, also interesting. Pressing this twice goes to the My Personal Settings mode. So here you can activate or deactivate, for example, this speed chime thing, like the speed limit warner. Here you have different driving modes you can click through. We're also going to test these here while driving. For example, the main infotainment unit. So when you switch the temperature here, appears in the lower left, Google built in. So and then you have like the native Google Maps support here directly, and also when you, for example, let's say you want to go to Porto from here, from the Lisbon area, then it should also Suggest some charging routes. Yeah, there we go. Like 2 charging stops on the route. It's by the way not flickering on real eyes, just on the camera here. So this then inbuilt everything, but at the same time you can also have Apple CarPlay. So that's also possible. You see here also one connected. Gotta say though that the quality of the rear view camera is really not good. Of course, you also want to see something from Leah. There she is. Yay! Also my favorite part of the video, of course. And then here, the frameless back mirror. That's a nice integration, definitely. And look at that, these top lights, you can play around with them just with touch when the doors are closed. When the doors are open, then they are always on. And then here, the visor or sunlight. There's also a light for that. And is it extendable? I guess not. No, it's not. Okay. Thanks for that. Now to the rear seats. Inside of the doors at the rear, here all hard pack, but you have the fabric inside right here. And then you have the same nice denim style seats in this techno trim here. Isofix in the lower part with these covers. I think it's a really beautiful design and also carried over the rear. And this special design with this segmentation here also all the way inside of the roof from the back to the front part. That's actually pretty cool. Also these rear small lamps here on the interior, they are with touch. Pretty cool integration actually. Just don't wonder when the doors open, then they are on and then you cannot put them out like this. They're always on then basically, but here when the doors are closed, you can play around with them. And then seating position, also the space. So this is when I would be driving. Obviously it hardly fits here, but this is also when a tall adult is driving, and most obviously way more space than in the R5. So yeah, when you sit like this, you can also house tall adults here in the rear, at least 2. The third seating is also allowed, but then it just gets very close with the knees, most obviously. But considering the length of the vehicle, the usage of space on the inside is actually pretty good. And the comfort itself here, like from the seating area, how soft it is and so on, is also actually fine. In the middle here, you have 2 USB-C chargers for the phones, for example. And yeah, there's nothing to fold down here, so on. But yeah, this is a really true denim style here. So I really like it. Might be my favorite trim. Let's check out the trunk or the boot, which is at 420 liters. You can also get this electric hatch. And then here we have in the width, it's actually exactly 1 meter or 40 inches. The length here is about 80 centimeters or 32 inches. And the total length to the seats there in the front, here we are at about 56 inches or 1 meter and 40. And the height, last but not least, before we get to very interesting features, here we are at about 80 centimeters or 31 inches. So you can see also fits in vertically. It's actually a pretty high thing. That's why it gets all the liter figures. And in the lower part here, it's interesting. You can fold these here open like this. You can also, like, that's a little bit tricky, lift this one up, but there's like just limited space in here. So, but this is cool here for the charging cable, and then you can also lift it out completely with this.
Shopping.
Yeah, or maybe if you forgot some shopping bags, there tend to be some couples that sometimes forget to bring shopping bags, and then they need something like this.
Flowers.
Or for flowers. Or maybe if you take the cable off there, maybe like for some wet, like surfing equipment, like if you go surfing here in Qashqai or something like that. Yeah, that would be something, right? So that's actually a nice idea. This, by the way, also here this V2L adapter that you can charge something on the outside or have like a hairdryer on the outside when you go, or something like that, when you go camping or something. And here we go with the vehicle to load adapter for normal power supply. Yeah, for example, for this very typical working condition here, right? And another useful interior feature is that you can fold down here the passenger seat flat. And then, for example, for this typical surfboard usage, and then you can load things through directly from the rear to the front, really to the front glove box. Driving the Renault 4 or R4, and the first thing that is very important here, this is the first Renault that can also use the one pedal driving. And at the moment I've set it to 0, but with the shifting pedals here, left, stronger recuperation, even stronger level 2, but this is still not one pedal driving. And then when you press one more time, then it says one pedal activated, then you have strong recuperation, and you would also come to a standstill. I can soon show that to you in that traffic before we do our first acceleration here for today. So here now, so I'm leaving my foot off the throttle, and now we're coming to a full stop. There we go, one pedal in here, just slightly on, off, and there we go, full stop. And if I go one mode back again, I have to, interesting, there we go, here see, switch it back again. And the only interesting thing is when I restart the vehicle, it's being reset if it's in the one pedal driving mode. So you always have to do it here with the left pedal once again. The other modes, if you have like 0, 1 or level 2 in the recuperation, these are actually being saved. So when you do the next startup. And now we put it to the sport mode. There we go, everything turns red, and acceleration 50 to 80. There we go, that's it. Oh, it even had a sound for reaching the acceleration limit here. Yeah, that is like the speed limit chime. And you can actually also deactivate it here with this personal mode. Press it here on the left side, press it twice, and then you can set your own personal setting for my personal setting, which can, for example, include turning off that speed limiter, which is kind of annoying at times. We don't want to exceed the speed limit, but if it's like 1 kilometer or over the limit, it's not that dramatic because that's by tachometer and not necessarily by GPS, So like 1 kilometer an hour is not the real issue. So sometimes it can be just an annoying, and also if maybe like a wrong traffic sign or so is being caught. And it's definitely a fun car. So if you compare it to the Renault 5 or R5, yes, it's a little bit longer. It also has this slightly longer wheelbase, but it doesn't feel too different since they're all using the same technology and so on. So I would say you do not really lose much driving fun, but you gain more space and more flexibility on the interior, definitely. Here in this sport mode, by the way, not only have we like the red instruments, but we also have a more sensitive throttle pedal. It's really, really sensitive. So probably for most situations, you would stick with the combat mode. When you press it here, by the way, it takes sometimes a while, like when all the animations go and so on. So it's not the best mode switch, so to speak. And probably in most situations, you will not use it that much. In the eco mode, for example, it's exactly the opposite. Then the throttle input is rather decreased, so to speak. And the good thing is also that although we have a small car, the seats are pretty nice. So it looks like these are seats for a larger vehicle, and you also feel that while driving. And I gotta say, being stuck here in this like traffic inner city motorway situation here in Lisbon, there's a lot going around us here, and we don't feel too much from that. We are still pretty much relaxed because my first impression is that it's rather silent. It also comes standard with an acoustic windshield in the front. Oh, policia. So
I hope not for us.
no, I think we were all good, right? We were behaving very correctly, and I mean, didn't exceed. But it's always good that we didn't exceed the acceleration further. So always stick to the traffic rules if you want to keep your driving license. So that's mandatory for me because it's like a little bit like a taxi driver here in front of me. If I lose my driver's license, I kind of lose my job. You know what I mean? At least in parts of that. Yeah, so this is also what this car is for, swimming with the traffic, and we can also activate here the driving assistance. So let's see, we can set it here to a certain speed, then the car is keeping a distance to the one in front of us, and also here with the active lane keeping assist, I have to activate this. Yeah, now all safety is on, now everything is on again. Let's see. Yeah, some minor corrections here. You can see it right there. So this exists in a more sophisticated way. Let's take it that way. Yeah, but I mean, for most situations, it will definitely be fine. There we go. The most important thing that it keeps the distance to the car in front of us. Let's now see the motorway is taking a slight right bend. How the car is handling that now, if there are many overcorrections or not. But it's actually quite fine, you know, that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Not sure why I did lose the contact there. So now we're back again. You always see like there's a small symbol in there if the active lane keeping assist is active. And I'm not sure. Somewhat it was deactivated. I'm not sure if the car wasn't really sure about it, what it's doing. Yeah, so here we are in this mode again. Let's see, keeping us straight in. Yeah, I think that's fine now. So maybe we can test it at a higher speed later on. Now we're driving 80 kilometers an hour, so about 50 miles an hour. And now the car's at deceleration, and see how smooth the process is there then from the active or adaptive cruise control. Always also looking at Leah, because she's sometimes complaining about these assistance systems, and they're like, I'd rather drive yourself because it does create some stress on the passenger body. So, but that was okay, I think, yeah, right? That was okay. So also smooth deceleration process here. Gotta say though, I mean, it looks like this fun go-kart-ish car on the exterior a little bit, but it's more relaxing than you think, I really feel. So I think that's also the thing, when the difference between the R5 and the R4, here you have more space, but it's definitely a little bit more relaxed, you know, so it's actually very interesting. I'm also heading towards another motorway where we can drive a little bit faster then and see about the noise insulation there, but so far I'm actually quite happy with that. Only thing I realized here while driving with long legs, there are of course cars where you sit even better as a tall adult, and especially here with the knees. So my knee exactly fits between this middle console thing and the typical Renault volume control here next to the steering wheel. So that is a very, very narrow spot for my knee. I mean, if you have shorter legs, it won't be such a problem. And yeah, that was very loud. Probably time to deactivate this personal mode again. Yeah, that's also, then you get like these bling bling sounds when there's, for example, a change in the speed limit, and even if you like obeying that. Yeah, but the good thing is that you can easily deactivate it also while driving here on the left side. So it's something that they thought about and offer something nice and convenient to the customers actually. The steering feel itself is light, but it's still precise, so I'm happy with that. Let's see if it changes between Eco and Sport mode. So there we go. I kind of have to press twice. Maybe a little bit, but the steering itself is still very light. So it stays light, maybe a little change. It's more like the most thing I feel is that the throttle input is changing. So that's a very, very, very sensitive here in the Sport mode. And here I think with letting us in, I won't have much chance with that today. What the hell? That's not very nice. Thank you. For nothing. Yeah, I always try to let people in when they want to change the lane actually. So there we go. It's actually fun to drive, definitely, you know. So we have 18-inch wheels mounted here. The suspension has multi-link in the rear, and you feel that sometimes when you have small cars that are also lower budget and so on, then they sometimes also have very basic suspension, and you gotta say, yeah, okay, you don't pay so much money. But here, having a multi-link in the rear, you feel that. And though there are 18-inch wheels, which is already kind of big for the size of the vehicle, I think the suspension is not too rough. So what do you think, suspension-wise?
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, because, and I mean, you always get 18-inch wheels, either the standard ones with the wheel caps, or then you get the ones with like the true aluminum wheels. So both are actually available. And this is also, by the way, a typical situation when you have a car that is just smaller. It's easier to fit in these small gaps here as well, and yeah, move a little bit around here and there, and be agile. And that's also kind of fun, you know, maneuvering yourself in and out of that way. I think we have to go one more time to the left. But this is also exactly what this car is made of. And it kind of releases also the stress when you're a little bit more agile, when the car is shorter and so on. So definitely a very, very suitable situation. I do want to drive some more motorway though, also concerning the consumption. It also makes sense, like for example, for a German use case. Most of the time this car, of course, will be used in city driving and so on. But we recently also had some comments that if you live in the rural surroundings, then you might go like 90 kilometers an hour for a longer way with this vehicle, which is also fine with the EVs, definitely. And the only big problem rather is when you drive like really, really high speeds for a longer period of time. Top speed here is 150 kilometers an hour, and it wouldn't make much sense to go fast with it anyway, because then the battery will not be sufficient for most of the long haul rides. Try to keep it rather efficient at like 100 to 120 kilometers an hour, but that also counts basically for all the different EVs and so on. Now more acceleration motorway, 62, let's see. That's 120. So it's a nice acceleration bit here, definitely. It's just that we feel that, above 100, 110 kilometers an hour gets quite noisy then. So that's maybe the only thing. The suspension, as I said, is not too harsh. I feel it's a good setup with this multi-link rear axle and the 18-inch wheels. Also, when we do some lane changes here at higher speeds, it's not uncomfortable when there are some uneven parts on the road. At the same time, it does give us stability and also maneuverability. It feels really controlled, like it's a very, very solid chassis as well. Of course, low center of gravity because of that big battery then in the center part of the vehicle. So I like really all the driving behavior of this vehicle here. The only thing is really where there you feel that there are of course more expensive EVs out there which have like more high-speed features and stuff. Acceleration is not really the issue. I mean, it's 8.2 seconds here with the 150 horsepower version which we're driving, 9.2 seconds with the 120 horsepower version with the smaller battery. But here, just like the wind noise above 100 kilometers an hour, it's not that it is like that there would be like a certain part where there's a very specific wind noise. It's just that the overall noise volume then is just a little bit too high to me, I feel. And it's mainly just the wind noise. It's not that we have like too much road noise or anything rattling or something like that. Just the overall noise volume on the motorway when you drive a little bit quicker. That's more the thing. I also want to keep it here at about 120 kilometers an hour for a longer period of time to see more about the consumption, because we want to do a realistic mix here for you today. And at this moment we are here at about 17 kilowatt hours and 1 kilometers. And we've driven some city before, so it might be a little bit higher than here when we go in motorway. It's also a little bit up and down, which is fine for EVs, because these topographic changes are good that you can use the recuperation again. Otherwise, with some pure combustion engines, these things would just be lost. But to me, the most positive thing is that it feels very controlled, also at higher speeds. It doesn't feel like a budget vehicle or something like that, It feels rather sophisticated in that respect. Also really fun to drive, both in the city and also here at higher speeds on the motorway. I tend to be in the sport mode on the motorway, by the way, here, because comfort might be also okay, but in the eco mode, for example, when you hit the throttle, then it's like only like when you really pin it, then something is happening. So maybe rather reserve the eco mode for the city. It's pretty weird. You've seen it maybe on camera that always when I switch to driving modes, like the Google Maps is disappearing for 1 second and it's turning black.
It's not CarPlay.
That's the internal Google Maps. That's not the CarPlay Google Maps. So that's maybe like a weird programming. They could probably fix that a little bit. But I'm really positively surprised how well it's handling on the motorway, with the minus point that we have this relatively high wind volume noise above 100 kilometers an hour. And the space here for my right knee is limited, and also for my left knee. So when you're tall, the space for your knees while driving you gotta keep them in a very, very certain position that they don't hit anything. So this is then on the negative side. And yeah, that's why we're here, always giving you the pros and cons. But the overall driving here of this vehicle, yeah, it's just definitely a lot of fun and suits basically all situations. Besides, it might get a little bit too loud for you when you drive it maybe like long term, that quick. Our overall test consumption here for today with motorway, but also with city driving and also some countryside driving, is 15 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers in mild temperatures, as you can see here from our clothes and so on. So pretty good conditions for an EV. So this 15 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers, that is 4 miles per kilowatt hour, would mean for the bigger battery we had here today, the 52 kilowatt hour battery, is a realistic real-world range of 350 kilometers or 220 miles. If you rather drive motorway faster, we did some testing 120 kilometers an hour, with cruise control and so on, then it more goes towards 18-ish kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers. That's 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And that would rather be like a 290 kilometers or 180 miles real-world range than if you have these higher speeds. Overall, I would say acceptable consumption figures. This won't be the high-speed motorway vehicle anyway. Then, as for the pricing, it starts around 29,000 euros, goes up to 38,000 euros if you go like all spec and so on. This one here stays a little bit below that. You could, for example, get like the soft top version, which is a little bit more expensive and so on. This is also still reasonably priced in comparison. Yes, for a small car, it's not that cheap in comparison to like older petrol car prices we are used to. Meanwhile, car prices have risen definitely, but the R5 and the R4, they are actually quite good in the pricing overall. If you consider that here you get way more vehicle, yes, the entry price is 4,000 euros more expensive than the R5. But then if you go in a higher spec, the price difference is not that large anymore. That's also a very interesting thing to consider. I found it pretty cool that it's fun on the exterior, that you can get this soft top, for example. There's a unique feature in this segment here. And here also the space advantage in comparison to the R5. And then it really drives well and it feels like a very solid vehicle, actually, considering it's not like the most high premium vehicle. Only like space for your knees when you are a little bit tall, and the wind noise on the motorway. That's maybe rather on the negative sides, but that's what we're here for, always presenting you the pros and cons. Tell me your feedback about the R5 and also wait a minute, this is the R4. Tell me your feedback about the R4 and now check out the R5 review.